Scottie Scheffler, he has by far one of the purest actions on tour. His 2023 season from tee to green was absolutely unbelievable. We're talking Tiger 2000 standard. His putting obviously let him down in 2023, but let's have a look at his swing and how he creates such a repeatable action that enables him to have one of the best long games on tour, and he just dominates. So we'll look first on down the line. We've got really traditional setup. Arms hang nicely below the shoulders, a little bit of knee bend, just a very, very traditional sort of looking posture. He's very relaxed, got a little bit of rounding through the spine. We don't see too much of an upright spine angle there. You can see he's just got a nice little bit around there, not too bolt upright straight like was taught a lot through the early sort of 2000s with guys like Adam Scott. So really nice neutral posture. And then what we'll see from his takeaway is we get nice and wide. I think there's a lot of Tiger 2000 influence in that swing. You can see Scotty likes the Tiger Woods shoes, the Tiger Woods irons, so I think he's got a little bit of Tiger like worship in his swing, you know, as growing up as a kid, which all kids of that generation usually, Tiger was the dominant factor. So you'll see as well, if I just draw a line on his hip and his head from face on, you'll see this, it's sort of an old school move. Now we're really taught, a lot of guys are taught to get the right hip back, whereas Scotty moves it more laterally. Again, Tiger did this in 2000. If you watch, I know the camera moves a little bit, but you definitely see a little bit of a bump to that right side, a little bit of a throwback, but I love that move, especially for Scotty. He's a tall guy, gets a lot of width and a lot of speed. So if you take it back to halfway back, you'll see, again, really wide, not a lot of wrist set. Again, very similar to Tiger in 2000. And we'll look from face on, gets really nice and wide. It's a little bit awkward camera angle this, but we can see again, arms are just nicely in front of the chest. Look at that width, look how far his hands are from his chest, just miles of width. And Scotty's a tall fella, he's probably 6'3", so he can really utilize those long levers. And then we'll get to the top of his swing. Really look at that width there, really high hands, lovely neutral club face, probably a little bit weaker than we'll see a lot of guys on tour. That toe's quite toe down, but pretty neutral compared to his wrist pretty flat. That elbow, you could say it's a little bit flying a little bit out, but it's very minimal. And what that elbow does, it allows him to get his hands really nice and high at the top. If we look from face on, look how wide that is. Just a great way of developing speed. Really nice and wide. Again, we don't see a lot of wrist set up at the top. You know, we see normally a lot of guys with a lot more called radial deviation where those wrists set, but not a lot. But what that allows him to do is he creates a little bit more stretch on the downswing, which will create a little bit lag. Can you see that? You'll also see Scotty's got this unusual action from the top. Well, there's quite a lot of unusual things. Obviously, we'll get to the footwork, which I'm sure a lot of you will be aware of. But you'll see a little bit more left arm bend than most, but that again, that allows his hands to get really high at the top. And then you'll see actually as he starts down, and I think this is partly due to that limited wrist set in the backswing. Watch how he slightly increases the arm bend. A lot of people are taught to keep those arms straight, but Scotty's absolutely dominating golf at the minute. He's got a little bit of arm bend, so if you struggle to get to the top, you can learn from that. You know, let that left arm bend a little bit if you're right-handed. But what you'll see is he'll start the downswing, sort of an old-fashioned move again, with a lot of lateral drive to the left. And I think that's why you see a lot of that funky foot movement with Scotty. I've not seen his ground force data. Obviously not a lot of people will have, but it'd be interesting to see how he uses the ground from a ground force perspective. But you'll see a lot Watch this from face on. Look how much he shifts left. That's not something we see in a lot of guys now. We see a little bit of a bump and then it's more of a rotary action. But look at that drive left. What that allows him to do, because his hands are so high at the top, allows him to drop those hands down, shallow the club. Look, it's a little bit steeper than what is taught now. I know, it's not a brilliant camera angle. A lot of guys are taught to sort of get the shaft in more of this position, but because Scottie's quite a tall, sort of two-planed action, this sort of bump to the left and a little bit of shallowing. Look, it's not massive, but a little bit of a shallowing. It's not the trendy thing as it were now, and it's more of a throwback, but it works for Scottie. He's a tall guy, and it's a lovely, lovely action. Really see that squat down. Look at that knee bend increasing on the way down. Down, down, down. Maintains that wrist angle. Really loading into the ground laterally. You're not going to see a lot of rotation in Scottie swing with it being a little bit more upright. Let's bring it down a couple more frames. So really, really working laterally, holding the angle. That arm, this is a nice checkpoint for anybody at home watching. When we get to sort of shaft parallel, you almost want that trail shoulder and trail elbow to almost be in a line, which Scottie does beautifully there. Club face, a little bit probably more open than a lot of guys are teaching now. A lot of guys obviously teach more club face parallel to the back line, so that would be a little bit open for today's sort of modern teaching. But again, Scottie's a bit of a throwback, likes to keep it open, likes to work the ball both ways as well. So you see a little bit more hand action from Scottie, but closes it down beautifully there. You'll see that lead foot start to work up through the heel. That toe comes up a little bit. Let's have a look from face on. Let's get rid of these lines. So again, look at he's moving laterally, 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 holding that lag. You'll start to see now, because he's moved so much laterally, I'll actually bring up that line from the top so you can actually see. Look how much he's moved laterally, massive amounts, and he keeps moving laterally. Look at his fly, look how much he's moved his belt buckle and his fly from the top, and it keeps moving, starts to move into that lead hip, starts to move back now. But because he's moved that much laterally, you'll see this right foot start to slide. And he's just got to do that because he's moved so much laterally. It's an old school sort of motion, and it works beautifully for Scottie. Slides, slides, slides. Gets up onto that lead leg and that lead hip, which allows him to move that butt back, something he works a lot on with his coach, which we'll look on down the line in a minute. Keeps wide, wide, wide. And let's just look at that, how that trail hips works back. So you'll see now, slide, side, side, that foot starts to move back, that hip starts to move back, and you'll see there, that foot, that right foot starts to slide back as well. Now what that does for Scottie is it'll create a lot of room for him. So Scottie's bad habit is to get a little bit closer to the ball, early extend a little bit, and lose a lot of space at impact. So he does a lot of practice with like a pencil in the butt end of the club. It's a great drill for anybody who early extends. So he has a pencil, I'll bring him back to setup. There's a pencil almost in the butt of the club like this. So obviously if you early extend any, then you will hit that pencil on your body on the way down. So he does a lot of drills with, like say, a pencil in the butt end of the club. So what he does is he tries to really keep those hips away from the ball, so it allows him loads of room. Again, because of that lateral movement, that right foot's going to move towards the ball, and then because he's trying to maintain space, it'll move a little bit back. He'll move really into those heels, and then just lovely rip through it, nice and wide through the takeaway. Keeps that width. There's not a lot of club face or manipulation through there. Just boom, square on. and his path is pretty neutral, allows him to work it both right, and left. Moves the ball a lot both ways, hence why he's such a good iron player and gains a lot of strokes on the field into greens, because he can work it both ways. It's sort of a lost art form at the moment. Maybe we'll see going forward with ball changes that does come back, and I think guys like Scottie will even dominate even more because of that ball change, and he is able to work the ball both ways. Look at that width there. Beautiful width. Beautiful. Again, some sort of an old school action. Loads of width, loads of speed. Look at that width there. Look at how much that right foot sliding. He's just such a lateral mover. It's a great throwback. It's not something that you'd probably teach anymore, but it works for Scottie. And if you're somebody who likes to work more laterally, Scottie might be a great blueprint for you. It's something that's not really taught for a lot of guys anymore. That lateral motion of the pelvis certainly was when I was growing up, that you were taught, get back to your right side, get left, keep that width, and it works. Tiger 2000.